Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, March 6, 2017 regular Board of County Commissioners meeting. We will begin with an invocation by Reverend Scott Alexander from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Vero Beach, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by our Vice Chairman, Peter O'Brien. Please rise.
Do I use this mic?
Yeah. Anyone you want, Reverend.
Let us be one in spirit. Dear God, that spirit of life and love that breathes so faithfully through our creation, we give thanks for the amazing diversity of your creation. We give thanks for the diversity of the natural world, everything from apricots to alligators, mangoes to manatees, zebras to zinnias. For all the countless living, breathing things that make our earth so rich and colorful a place. We give you thanks for your amazing diversity of human spirituality. So many world faiths helping humanity live with purpose and love and meaning. Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist, Baha'i, Native American, and so many other faiths that inform and elevate people everywhere. And we give thanks for the amazing and beautiful diversity of people, your children who populate our world with infinite variety and charm, so many wonderful colors, black, white, brown, red, yellow, and every shade in between, with infinite personalities, perspectives, and proclivities, so many distinct cultures and identities, young and old, black and brown and white, gay and straight and transgender. On and on goes the delightful and beautiful dance of human diversity. Everywhere we look, dear God, we see your love of difference. So help us, dear God, to open our hearts and minds to your natural and holy diversity. And in everything we say or do or think this day, may we celebrate, honor, and protect the diversity of your creation, most especially human difference. There is nothing to fear. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Commissioners, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda or emergency items?
Move to approve as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is a presentation of proclamation designating the month of March 2017 as Colon Cancer Awareness Month. That'll be presented by Vice Chairman Peter O'Brien and Teresa. Teresa Woodson's here, and I believe she's brought a few people to accompany her. Just a few.
More than a few.
I like to have friends.
Would anybody else in the audience like to stand up?
Good morning, Teresa. Let me read the proclamation, and we'll be glad to hear a few words from you, okay?
Thank you.
All right. This is a proclamation designating the month of March 2017 as Colon Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas Indian River County, Florida celebrates the month of March as Colon Cancer Awareness to bring greater awareness to colon cancer screening, education, and prevention. And whereas colon cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death in the United States for men and women combined, and whereas 1 in 20 people will develop colon cancer, and every 10 minutes a life is lost to the disease. And whereas this year alone, over 135,000 new cases of colon and rectal cancer will be diagnosed in America, and over 50,000 deaths are expected. And whereas a simple screening test is recommended for individuals over age 50 and earlier for those with a family history to help combat the disease. And whereas Indian River County has joined with the American Cancer Society in an effort to promote increased screenings to save lives in Florida and across the country. And whereas education and increased awareness can help inform the public of methods of prevention and early detection of colon cancer. And whereas our goal is to achieve an 80% screening rate by 2018 through recommended screenings, as this cancer can be caught early when treatment is most effective. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the month of March 2017 be designated as Colon Cancer Awareness Month in Indian River County, and the board encourages all citizens to work together to promote awareness and understanding of colon cancer and the need for screening to eradicate the disease. Adopted the 7th day of March 2017, signed by all 5 county commissioners. And Teresa, we always look to the chair for leadership for the board. And so it's my understanding that the chairman has scheduled a colonoscopy and that he will be streaming that live on Facebook to help spread the awareness of early detection of colon cancer. And so we always look to the chair for leadership, and I think this is one where he's really stepping up to be a leader. But there might be good news for the chairman. There may be some other screening things that are available that you might want to tell us about.
Well, Counselor, did he just push the HIPAA window? Thanks, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Now the cat's out of the bag, and yes, I'll be committed to screening this year. This year.
Thank
I
you,
will be
Commissioner
committed,
O'Brien.
And it's because of our conversation.
There you go.
But please
Well,
go
Tracy,
ahead.
yeah, tell us a little
Thank
bit.
you for the
Well, thank you,
announcement. I really
Commissioner
appreciate
O'Brien
that one.
and Chairman Flesher and the distinguished members of our county commission. My name is Teresa Woodson. I am a senior manager with the American Cancer Society on the Treasure Coast, and it is a privilege to represent the American Cancer Society and to stand before you today as you declare the month of March Colon Cancer Awareness Month. It is also an honor to stand here with representation of key healthcare agencies who are partnering with the Society in an effort to save lives through a colon cancer prevention and education initiative called 80 by 2018. With me today are representatives from the Scully Welsh Cancer Center, the Treasure Coast Community Health, and Visiting Nurse Association of the Treasure Coast. All have signed an 80 by 2018 pledge, an initiative that is being led by the American Cancer Society, the Centers for Disease Control, and the National Colorectal Roundtable. These organizations are working toward the shared goal of seeing 80% of adults age 50 and older screened for colon cancer by 2018. With your permission, it is a pleasure to present each of these partners with a certificate of appreciation for the work they are doing. Scully Welsh Cancer Center was recently chosen by the American Cancer Society to receive a Colorectal Cancer Partnership Award in recognition of its support for and efforts in colorectal cancer screening. The Partnership Award is a monetary award of $5,000 to support colorectal cancer screening initiatives in 2017. The award recognizes hospital systems that have embraced a shared goal to have 80% of adults age 50 and older screened for colorectal cancer by 2018. Criteria include a high level of engagement with the American Cancer Society, signing of the 80 by 2018 National Campaign Pledge, and the implementation of colorectal cancer prevention and screening initiatives this year. So to Dr. James Grichnick, Director of the Scully Welsh Cancer Center, and the executive leadership team at the center, thank you for the work you are doing to improve colon cancer screening. Treasure Coast Community Health is in partnership on this initiative with the American Cancer Society since 2014. As a federally qualified healthcare center, TCCH has received $28,000 over 3 consecutive years as part of the American Cancer Society's Practice Improvement Program grant. TCCH is working on multiple interventions to increase colorectal cancer screening. They have improved their colon cancer screening rates from 11.4% in 2013 to 34.1% in 2015. It is a pleasure to present a certificate of appreciation for this partnership to Vicki Soleil, the Chief Executive Officer for Treasure Coast Community Health. Thank you. Visiting Nurse Association is one of the largest employers in Indian River County. Through the Employee Health and Wellness Program, they are promoting colon cancer screening for employees who are 50 or older. They are not only impacting the overall screening rate in our community, they are actively advocating for the health and well-being of their employees, who every day are providing for the health and well-being of patients in our community. Thank you, Mary Lynn Hamilton, President and CEO of Visiting Nurse Association of the Treasure Coast, for your leadership and partnership. Colorectal cancer screening is the second leading cause of cancer death in the U.S. when men and women are combined, and a cause of considerable suffering among more than 135,000 adults diagnosed with colon cancer each year. When adults get screened for colorectal cancer, it can be detected at a stage when treatment is most likely to be successful. In some cases, colon cancer can be prevented through the detection and removal of precancerous polyps. I would like you to meet Pat Pellington, a friend of mine who has an exceptional story to share. Pat.
Teresa. Thank you. Good morning. It's both a pleasure and a privilege to be here, and in many ways a gift. 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, and the diagnosis began with a simple Hemocolt test. Colonoscopy and a subsequent biopsy confirmed that diagnosis. Treatment protocol included a colon resectioning, systemic chemotherapy, and targeted radiation. Simple tests of blood markers and readings of regular colonoscopy procedures indicate any recurrence for me. No lifestyle indicators nor any symptoms were present at the time of my diagnosis. I had an active, healthy lifestyle, good diet, had regular exercise, but as you can see, early detection is key to any successful outcome of cancer. Hemocolt testing, other available tests, and colonoscopy procedures are simple tests, the best defense against any type of cancer, particularly colorectal. Family history is also an important indicator. I had none. But now, my son and daughter, because of my history, both have periodic colonoscopies, and they began at the age of 30. My son has every year had precancerous polyps removed, so therefore, he has been spared a colorectal cancer diagnosis. So thank you. Thank you, Board of Commissioners, for this proclamation, this priority, and for encouraging testing and early detection here in Indian River County. We appreciate your efforts to guard the health and the welfare of the Indian River County residents. Thank you.
So nationally, about 1 in 3 adults between 50 and 75 years old, or about 23 million people, are not getting tested as recommended. If we can achieve 80% by 2018, it is predicted that 277,000 cases and 203,000 colorectal cancer deaths would be prevented by the year 2030. In Florida alone, we need to screen 1.6 million people to reach the 80% goal. There are several recommended screening options. A colonoscopy is the gold standard. It does require a day of preparation, Joe, and is performed at a surgery center. It is the most invasive, but also the most thorough. Less invasive testing includes the fecal occult blood test, or FOBT, and the fecal immunochemical test, or FIT, a stool DNA test, and a CT colonography. The American Cancer Society advocates the best test to be the one people are willing to take. For a non-symptomatic person of average risk, any test is better than no test. And there is a lot to learn and a lot that could be said, and I would encourage people to go to cancer.org for additional information or to have a conversation with their healthcare provider. The organizations standing before you today are united in the belief that we can substantially reduce colorectal cancer as a major health problem. With this proclamation, you too are helping to educate our community and increase screening rates that will ultimately save lives. Thank you. Indian River County Commissioners, for your partnership.
Well,
So now I have to ask.
we might recall that Vice Chairman O'Brien made a rather humorous announcement, but it was very serious, and it is compelling. And if I wasn't compelled by that, I'm compelled by your statements.
Well, thank you.
It's something that a lot of people put off, a lot of people don't want to experience. It is a little complicated. It does take a little preparation, but it starts with an appointment.
It
And
does.
an appointment with a medical practitioner who can save your life. And, you know, all too often we find that people get diagnosed a little too late, and there's nothing worse than seeing that medical practitioner. Wish I saw you last year.
Right.
And there's nothing to be done. And yes, I want to thank you for our conversations before this as well, which already had encouraged me. All right, Peter helped it along. Now everybody knows. So I would like anybody else who heard that knows that there's a commitment that was gained by this contact, that perhaps maybe there can be another commitment, so that maybe, if not for you, but for your loved ones, that you're doing the right thing. You know, we do a lot of things. We're supposed to eat healthy, live healthy, but that detection is pretty important. And I like the idea of the alternative detection that we would like to see happen mainstream, because as you said, it's not the perfect scenario, but any detection is better than no detection.
Well, and also based on our conversation, I've had the pleasure of being the matchmaker between Human Resources with the Board of County Commissioners and the Scully Welsh Cancer Center, and I know that they are working on opportunities to, you know, move that needle and present this information at their health fair coming up this summer. So thank you for encouraging me to talk with Ann Rankin, and I thank the Scully Welsh Cancer Center for stepping in and working on that partnership to again, you know, help increase the awareness, increase the screening, and increase the number of lives we can save. The fact that you mentioned our conversation is really so important. Sort of a stage 2 of the 80 by 2018 campaign is something that we were calling +1. And so once you have your test and realize that you are going to be just fine and live through it, that it's not the end of the world, that it's really just a blip on the radar in your life, share your experience with someone else and talk to someone. So that's the +1. So
I don't know if I'm going to
so
share
have
with
your
Peter
test.
O'Brien.
Last week.
Sure enough.
Yeah, I think we've gone to the limits. No, Counselor? No.
Well, and thank you for the plus by many that will occur through, you know, the broadcasting of this. And last week they launched the national campaign for Colon Cancer Awareness Month, and Katie Couric hosted a 2-hour program in Times Square and invited a bunch of you know, celebrities. Al Roker was there, so he said something that really stuck with me, and I'll share it with you, Joe. And he said, "Get off your tush and take the test." That was all he said. So,
I must have been talking to Peter. Now,
you know, maybe you can get appointments together, side by side.
Maybe the whole board should go.
you know,
Yeah, the whole board.
I don't think there's any sunshine in that one.
Thank you again very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want you to come up for a picture. Do I have a volunteer in the audience that might be willing to take a picture?
Scott can. Why don't y'all come up here in front of the
Come on.
dais?
Right here.
Thank you very much.
You may be seeing these folks again. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Teresa, you want to hold that, or?
Thank you once again.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you once again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. For making this happen. Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Oh, okay. I don't see the doctor. So. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you.
Hi, Vicki, how you doing? Good, thank you.
Well, now on to a different note. We have the next item is a proclamation and presentation to recognizing March 2017 as Indian River County's Bike Month. I'll be presenting that, and that will be presented to Dave Hunter and you, Aaron. Come on up. And we have a whole team of cycling aficionados. And the Reverend has left. He's the one with the...
Yes, we should have him.
You're
up
going to
here.
mention how many miles he rides. It's my honor and privilege to present this proclamation recognizing March 2017 as Indian River County's Bike Month. Whereas, since the mid-1800s, bicycles have been important for play, sport, and transportation for Americans across all regions and demographic groups. And whereas most Indian River County citizens and visitors bicycle for practical mobility, physical fitness, and family recreation throughout the year. And whereas educating both cyclists and motorists about correct, safe operations of bicycles and cars is crucial for everyone's safety and comfort. Whereas the Indian River County Metropolitan Planning Organization, Bicycle Advisory Committee, cycling organizations, and independent cyclists throughout Indian River County and the state of Florida are promoting greater public safety awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities. And whereas March is Florida Bike Month, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that March 2017 be designated as Bike Month in Indian River County, duly adopted this 7th day of March 2017, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Good morning, Mr. Aaron.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. The people here before you represent 2 groups focused on bicycle safety in Indian River County, Vero Cycling, Inc. Our president of Vero Cycling, Inc. is Sharon LaPointe, who really wanted to be here. She had a family obligation this morning. And then we also represent Bike Walk Indian River County. And for Bike Month, we would encourage everyone in the room to get out and ride their bicycle and come join us if you're interested. We have group rides, verocyclingclub.org if you want to come out and ride with us on a Saturday or a Sunday. And we will be back to talk with all of you all about some substantive bike safety ideas that we have, but we appreciate the ongoing support of all 7 of you all up there. We've spoken with all of you all multiple times about what we want to do, and we get great support for making this place a wonderful place to ride your bike and walk. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ms. Aaron. Yes?
I just have a comment. We are actually doing a bike ride together this Saturday out in the Fellsmere area. We're doing a bicycle tour of the historic downtown Fellsmere, so anybody that wants to join us, come on out. Just bring your helmet and your bicycle.
Yeah, we reviewed the brochure last night, and I got to say it's very impressive, the historical tour of Fellsmere. It sounds great, and it looks like something that anyone could do at any level, so I would encourage everyone here to come out to
Should be a lot of fun.
Fellsmere and ride and learn.
Looking forward to it with you guys.
Thank you.
You know, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and take a wild guess, but I imagine that tour ends up at Marsh Landing.
It does have a large parking lot. It's
Wow.
good for staging.
That was, and if people are maybe thirsty,
Hungry?
And Commissioner Fletcher, to your comment, Scott Alexander was telling us this morning, he rides 13,000 miles a year, 40
Can you
miles a
imagine?
day, 7 days a week, and he and another member of our group are getting ready to do a cross-country ride to raise money for UP, United Against Poverty.
well, and that's rather an impressive number. Commissioner Adams, I appreciate the extending the invitation there. I might see how our schedule is going to lay out there. I might join you. I had the opportunity to bicycle or tour a large portion of Indian River County with that man behind you, Teddy Floyd, when we were on the
I
Cope
didn't know
unit.
Teddy was back there. He ought to be up here with us. Teddy,
Yeah,
ride.
come on up, Teddy.
Come on, Teddy.
For years.
Teddy rides.
Yeah, with this girl is fishing, I'm right on that. Yeah, well, we might as well get the sheriff, because we all in there. And we got
That's
a
it.
Well, we're going to bring the sheriff back up here. Not today, but we got plans.
Okay.
But for years that we rode throughout the county and various reasons, and we put a lot of miles on those bikes, and you know, I don't know, we never raced. I don't know if you guys are into racing, but we did a rather brisk pace, and we had many programs that provided for youth safety and adult safety as far as bicycling, and the proper wearing of the gear. And we even had some volunteers that I believe are in your league that we did bicycle safety checks. And that we had volunteers. I think Malcolm Allen was the largest provider of bicycle repairs. And I think, Teddy, you're still doing that with Malcolm Allen as far as repairs?
Well, Malcolm was a part of the group, what we're doing now.
You're right.
We just enhanced it more, and thanks to the whole group, we're working together. And still do the things that you and I used to do. You know.
Thank you.
See more visibility when you're on them bikes. Catch bad guys that way.
Do miss it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate your support. Oh, sure, yeah.
How about the proclamation too, you?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Phil, you got it?
Oh, Phil, thank you.
You don't want to mount this on the bicycle, but maybe in the office of some sort. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, how y'all doing?
Thank you. Thank you.
Phil really ought to be in this picture right
Eddie.
now.
That's right, the MP. Look at- in typical Phil fashion. Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
See you, brother.
Good, bro.
And I did not return the favor of volunteering Commissioner O'Brien for the bike ride, but, you know, there's been enough volunteering today already. Next item on the agenda is information items. Commissioners, anything of interest to discuss? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Next item is the consent agenda. Commissioners, is there any interest of discussion on the board? If not, is there any member of the public that wishes to pull an item from the agenda for further discussion? Seeing none?
Move to approve consent as presented.
Second. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving right along, we're going to go to the public items, and we have a public hearing, which is the transmittal hearing for the county-initiated request to amend and update mixed-use policy 5.6 of the future land use development element, the FLU, of the county's comprehensive plan, and this is legislative in nature. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, Stan Bowling, Community Development Director.
And you have Suzanne Rahani with you?
Hassan, yes, Section Chief. This is a comprehensive plan text amendment, and just a refresher of the process. This application is submitted to Community Development department. This one's actually county initiated. The next step after that is a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and for this particular item, that was held this last January. And this is the transmittal hearing before the board. The board is to decide whether or not they want to transmit this particular amendment request, and is essentially in support of it. That would be transmitted to the state and regional review agencies, and they would give us their comments, and then we would hold a public hearing for at which time the board could vote for final adoption. And that hearing on the particular track we're on with this amendment is either June or July of this year. If it is adopted, that amendment is transmitted to the state and regional review agencies, and it would go into effect. This particular amendment, you all have seen the concept of it before. It's to amend one particular policy in our land use element for planned developments for mixed use. And in this particular case, it's specifically for a particular area in the county, and it's kind of referring to it as the State Road 60 Indian River State College preferred location area. And that area is the area that is adjacent to the commercial industrial node by the college. It's 58th Avenue and State Road 60. Also adjacent to the State Road 60, 66th Avenue intersection and IRSC campus. And from this aerial, you can see the particular area. This is the intersection of 66th Avenue and State Road 60 in this particular area. These are some of the existing campus buildings of Indian River State College, including the Brackett Library. And the commercial node itself goes adjacent to this particular area, especially up to the north where the mall and some of the mall out parcels are currently. So this is really an opportunity for an area that's currently vacant to go through the mixed use development process for commercial and residential uses, but also integrated into future expansion of the State College campus. As you can see from this particular aerial, a lot of the property that is under the State College ownership is yet to be developed. So as the campus expands, it will expand west into the area that is really the subject of this particular amendment. And a little bit of background, the mixed use policy went into effect in 2010. That was as a result of a 2008 evaluation and appraisal report. It had not been used the first few years it was in place. In 2013, a few changes were made. And the result was we did get a project, and a project that's currently under construction, a lot of it completed, the reserve at Vero. It's a bit east of the planned development, 60 Oaks, also a little bit west of the Olive Garden. The Chick-fil-A is out of the ground, a number of the apartments, and again, that's mostly constructed at this point. Also in 2013, the board instructed staff on a number of economic development initiatives. A lot of those have been accomplished. One of them was to look at this particular area of State Road 60 and 66th Avenue, look at commercial opportunities. And in doing that, staff coordinated with Indian River State College and the adjacent landowner who had some interest in developing commercial on at least some of the property involved. One thing I did want to emphasize here is that Indian River State College is not subject to the county development review process. They are consistent with the comprehensive plan in terms of their campus use and so forth. So really this amendment would apply to the adjacent private property, but it also requires, as structured, coordination with the state college. So in terms of this amendment, in lieu of looking at expanding the commercial node in the particular area, the concept is to expand allowances for the mixed-use concept. That concept was brought forward in October, and then in November of last year, 2016, and the board directed staff to proceed with the amendment, and that's what we're doing at this moment. Again, the proposed changes are intended to allow for essentially a master plan area near the State College and 66th Avenue and State Road 60 intersection for commercial uses and residential development, but also to integrate it in with campus expansion. A couple of items that are changed with this particular policy. Right now, mixed use allowance is limited to 40 acres. This would take it up to 80 acres to allow a larger area to essentially be master planned. There's also an allowance that is expanded in terms of the amount of commercial development that can take place on the property. There's also essentially the same type of uses that are currently allowed in a mixed-use lodging, institutional office, retail, personal service, restaurant, but also a live-work commercial flex space where you could actually have a mix of uses within a particular building or even a tenant space itself. Also, some of the changes are to allow for, again, some larger scale commercial, but still limited to the uses that I just described. And one of the, besides the kind of the increase in allowances, there's one requirement that would go into effect with this particular ordinance, and that would be some significant shared infrastructure, providing access to 66th Avenue, also a bridge over Lateral A, access to State Road 60, and a signal, and essentially coordinating infrastructure for the mixed-use project on the east side of 66th Avenue and integrating that in with access that will also serve the campus itself. Also, there are some changes proposed to the timing of construction. I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment, but allowing commercial development to proceed to a greater extent than it is currently with the current mixed-use policy itself. Now, in terms of the ownership of the current ownership in this particular area, in the kind of this lighter shade of brown, that's the Indian River State College existing property, partially developed here toward the east, but a lot of it in the future to be expanded. And you can see private property kind of in the darker brown and crosshatched area here around it would be a candidate for mixed use. And as you can see from this particular image, it's kind of a difficult configuration. And so one of the items that the adjacent property owner and the State College have been working on is essentially a land swap to consolidate in a more appropriate and meaningful fashion campus property and then property that can be developed commercially and part of the overall mixed-use development, kind of more toward the intersection itself. Again, staff supports the mixed-use approach. It's a preferred form if this particular request goes through and is ultimately adopted. You all would see a specific project again at some point in the future with a specific plan development design. It's also staff's opinion that this property being adjacent to the Indian River State College, it's a unique mixed-use opportunity. It's really, the only sort of college campus setting that we have, and the idea here is that we can take advantage of the fact that it's not fully developed at this point in time and kind of co-develop it into a master plan area, essentially starting with a clean slate. This is just a concept sketch of, and I think you all have seen this before, of the land swap and some of the coordination between a portion of the overall mixed-use area and the college campus, State Road 60 being here toward the top, 66th Avenue being here kind of down the left side. The idea being that Indian River State College, again, could consolidate land for their future campus expansion. This would be the rest of the campus, and this could be used for commercial development as part of a mixed-use facility with shared access, basically lining up with a partial median opening on State Road 60, coming down and accessing 66th Avenue with a bridge over Lateral A and a signal, and that would also open up a logical access point on the west side of 66th Avenue for yet to be developed property that could essentially be integrated into this infrastructure, into the commercial and into the campus itself. This concept, first step is for a change to the land use policy, and that's what is before you now. But we just want to give you a representation of what could move forward. Also want to just mention that at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, and I believe here at the hearing before you all this morning, there are representatives from Indian River State College as well as the adjacent landowner, and they're in support of moving this process forward. This map is just to show just potentially as the area that could be developed under a mixed use on, again, private property after a land swap or reconfiguration with the State College, up to 80 acres around this particular intersection. Again, residential and commercial integrating in with shared infrastructure with the college itself. A concern that was raised last time you all basically discussed the concept itself was the proposal to allow more of the commercial development to go forward prior to actual vertical units of residential itself. And what the policy is structured to do is to allow for that possibility, but to require not only the shared infrastructure that's part of the amendment itself, but also require conceptual or final approval of all the residential and either bonding out or putting in the infrastructure for all the residential areas, essentially making ready-made residential areas within the project itself. And staff's experience has been, along State Road 60, has been very limited with mixed use, Point West being one essentially mixed use project, but also the reserve at Vero, and it seems that there is strong demand for a residential component, and actually at times it seems that the commercial actually winds up lagging the residential itself. Based on Planning and Zoning Commission discussion, we did make one change in particular to making sure that this is targeted, this amendment request is targeted to the Indian River State College campus and State Road 60, 66th Avenue area. That's kind of limiting the scope of where, the geographic scope of where it could be put into effect as it's currently structured, because it is a unique opportunity. In terms of any comprehensive plan amendment, there are some criteria that have to be met to change the plan. The four are listed out here. We believe that essentially there was an oversight with the existing policy, and there's been a substantial change in circumstances that would warrant amending or changing the land use. The oversight really deals with the fact that in looking at the infrastructure needs and trying to integrate a project in with the Indian River State College campus, that it was too restrictive. We would really need to take advantage of a larger area to master plan and some incentives in return for a lot of the infrastructure that needs to go in for that type of project. And really the substantial change is at this point, Indian River State College and an adjacent landowner, at least in concept, agreeing to a configuration that would really take advantage of this type of change. Also, if you all want to move forward with this change, staff would be coming back with land development regulations that we have in place now for mixed-use policies to reflect the change in the comprehensive plan. Planning and Zoning Commission, again, has looked at this proposed amendment, voted 5-0 to recommend that the board approve the proposed amendment, and staff's recommendation is that the board approve the resolution that was attached to your packet and transmit this amendment to the reviewing agencies and announce your intention to adopt the amendment at a future public hearing. Be glad to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Stan. Commissioners, any questions of staff? I see that Stan is available, but Cezanne has 2 volumes of backup there, so any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. Stan, could you give me a reference for what a 60,000 square foot, is that like a grocery store size, is it like a Home Depot size? What's
Yes,
60?
it's smaller than Home Depot. It would be more of like one of the larger Publix would be in the kind of the 50, maybe low 50,000s. Ryanwood Shopping Center is on the order of, it's a little bit under 100,000. It's probably in the 80 to 90,000 square feet. So it's kind of half of that size shopping center, maybe a little bit larger.
But the 60,000 is for one building,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So just my concern here, and let me preface this, that I'm not insinuating anyone sitting here in the room today would be thinking of doing this. It's just in general, I've always been concerned with these mixed uses if we don't have some type of mechanism to make sure that the residential follows the commercial. And in this particular proposal, we're really ramping up the size of the mixed use. We're going from a total of 40 acres to 80. We're going from 10 acres of commercial to 30 acres. Our current rule has a cap of 3 acres of commercial, and then the residential has to come in. and we're bumping that up to 15 acres. And my concern is, in going from 25,000 to a 60,000 square foot building, if we look at the reserve, the Chick-fil-A that went in out front, I think, Stan, you said that's about an acre and a half, you said? Okay. And then the Outback is probably about the same, I'm guessing, and so.
Close.
You know, so with 15 acres, you could theoretically put 10 fast food joints there right on State Road 60, and then never have to do anything else on the site. Or you could put a couple, 3 fast foods in, a grocery store, couple other stores, and all on the State Road 60 frontage, and have a big, significant commercial project there. And then if they come in at 49.9%, just a 10 square feet under the 15 acres, then there's no incentive for them to do the residential for years or whatever. So I understand where staff is trying to go, that when they hit 50%, that they have to either construct or bond out the infrastructure required for the residential. But again, to me, that you can be just under 15 acres of commercial, and that mechanism doesn't kick in. So I still have, and again, I want to reiterate, I'm not accusing anyone in this room of intentionally doing that. That's just my fear going forward, that there could be an awful lot of commercial going in, and then there's no real incentive or requirement for the residential to go in. Now, I know at the reserve, there seemed to have been strong demand, and my understanding is that a lot of those apartments that they're building have been leased and signed, and even before construction, so there seems to be a good, strong demand for residential, and then the infill with the Chick-fil-A and the Outback, that one kind of, I think we can all say worked pretty good. I mean, it all fell in and was good. I just still have a concern that we've upsized this to a pretty big commercial project, and there is no limitation on getting the residential built until they're at 50%. I just still have that concern, and just wanted to put that out there. So
Right, and just in terms, yeah, it is kind of, from staff's perspective, we're putting more requirement on them for the shared infrastructure, and we're, from the public side, maybe there is more risk in terms of raising that threshold. So that was kind of a trade-off. I will say that in terms of the layout and the number of out parcels they may have or whatever, that will certainly be project specific and come through if a plan development is proposed. So just you're correct about the overall square footage, but you all, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, would see any actual layout and what size it would be, rather, instead of having 10 fast food tracks set out there or what have you. So that sort of design detail we'll certainly look at later. But overall, you're correct. The numbers are what they are.
And I do understand that it's a good benefit to the State College there for this plan. And I understand that the infrastructure is a major financial cost to the project. So I do understand those things. I just still have that concern that we'll see a lot of commercial and then maybe never see the residential at the end of the day. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you. Anyone else? Yes,
Mr.
Commissioner Zoll.
Excuse me. And just kind of following up on Commissioner O'Brien's discussion, and yes, the numbers are different, but when you're trying to look at how do you create an opportunity that has not just an opportunity, but a $2 million obligation in shared infrastructure, that's a big obstacle that you have to figure out how to work around. And when you look at this on the residential side, because of the size of the property, it could be like the reserve again, straight up apartments. It could be townhouses. It could be zero lot line. It could be a combination of things that typically are not the same developer group that one does the commercial, one does some of these hybrid residential pieces, or the new one that we put in there that kind of adds the flexibility of both the office use and residential combination, which seems to be a growing trend in some markets. So the incentive that it will get done someday is that somebody has to write the $2 million check. if this didn't have an infrastructure component, I think we would have approached it differently if you didn't have the canal to cross and the signals to put in. But this, and kind of going back on the history of this, if the original restaurant application that came in where the proposed new entry road is, if that applicant had gone forward, you would have had one business in the front with some multifamily in the back, and then the college wouldn't have its entrance, the corner person wouldn't have its entrance, and the person to the east, because of the DOT curb cut requirements of how often you can have an access off of State Road 60. So at the end of the day, I think it creates great opportunity, visibility, and a iconic entrance off of 60 for the college, which will be a great for people coming into the community to see. And I think it will be something that will be a great example of how private property owners, the state college, and the county could work together to create an opportunity that will create something great. I am a bit selfish. I'm just looking at, on the development side, the future tax base that will be generated at build-out once somebody comes forward and takes a portion of this or all of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Zork. And I appreciate both sets of comments. Again, it opens the door, and it provides for opportunity that allows us to continue to be different. We have a state college facility that's nearby, close enough to I-95. I don't think that many of the I-95 exits have that in their corridor. They're so close to I-95. The mall is located there. As far as the concentration of shopping, it is one of the epicenters from 66 to 58th Avenue. 58th Avenue is the most traveled intersection in the county. Is that correct, Stan? And you know, we could talk about limitations and contradictions, and do we have clawbacks? You know, we do. It's not about the bonding and going forward with the project. It's about where it lies, where it goes before staff, the P&Z, and ultimately this board. And I believe that we will do so with great conscience, and I believe that this gives another element of artistic value to the county, and provides for us to be able to follow through with a positive vision. You know, there has to be a matrimony of the residential and commercial community, and I think this provides a great opportunity for that to occur in a very comfortable fashion, other than just another group of stores, so we can look just like every other exit that as we get off I-95, and we just continually see fast food restaurants after fast food restaurants, after retail establishments with nothing but shoppers, no citizens. So, thank you. Is there anything else? Yes?
Just a couple comments. One, I think this is a great plan. I think the expansion will allow in the future more flexibility in what happens in that area. With everything being a planned development, I think that gives staff the ability to craft these projects as they come through in a way that will fit in that corridor. I think this is a great collaboration between the State College and private property owners, and what is going to come out of that will be beneficial to that area. I also think that that corridor is really where a lot of growth is going to happen in the future. And with the college being next door, it's a natural fit to have those mixed uses and to have those residential options available. And I think this just fits in and to that overall plan and vision that you guys have. I also think, like I said, expanding those options and those sizes is going to give the property owners as well as staff the ability to craft some better developments and really give them that flexibility to make that area flow very well and not be constrained by some of those prior requirements. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? Well, thank you, Stan and Suzanne. Appreciate the update, and we'll now open this as this is a public hearing. Is there any member of the audience that would like to speak? Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Christopher Marine. I'm an attorney with Gould Cooksey Fennell, and I represent the adjacent property owner, private property owner. It's Bureau 12 and the Greenfield Trust, who are essentially the same principals that have the surrounding property. Also present today, we have representatives of Indian River State College. Mr. Lunsford, the provost, is here. Cheryl Vitito, hope I pronounced that right, Cheryl. Their CFO is here, as well as their engineer. So we have our project engineer and our real estate agent present because we're really enthusiastic participants in this process. We really appreciate the opportunity that we've had to participate in it, and we've kind of followed it through the sequence of drafts and refinements to the mixed-use policy. And just wanted to state, for the record, we're very comfortable with the work that Stan's done, the work that the Cezanne has done, and we can live with the present text of the mixed-use policy amendments. Just in short, we feel it's suitable to kind of integrate commercial, residential, and institutional uses. It's not an easy task, but I don't think you can tie it too tight. I don't think you can tie the bow up too tight. I think you have to allow yourself flexibility because the development, we don't know if residential will go in front of commercial. We don't know if commercial will go in front of residential. I think what we know is it probably won't happen at the same time, and it probably won't be done by the same parties. So taking all that into account, I guess you have to pick a threshold like staff has done, and at some point make a leap of faith that it's going to work. I think you can, to Peter's point, I think you can draw a little comfort because the project next door, the Preserve, residential actually went out front. And I think from my real estate agent buddies told me that the apartments are all full. But for commercial, I think maybe we have Chick-fil-A and an Outback under construction, and the rest there's been no disposition of the other commercial out parcels. So that makes, I would think it would make you feel a little bit better about how things are going to play out. I think you have to draw a balance. I think we've made our very best efforts to draw a balance between commercial and governmental interests, and at some point you have to turn it loose and let it get a life of its own. Just to tell you where we are, where State College is, and where my clients are, we're in the process of developing the legal agreements to do all this. This has a lot of moving parts. I won't bore you too much with it, but we have to reconfigure boundaries. We have to do exchanges and swaps of real property. We have to create duties upon commercial development to build out multi-million-dollar infrastructure requirements. And I have to kind of craft this into governing agreements and create covenants that run with the title of these properties. So a lot of moving parts. I feel very confident that we'll get there. We're in the throes of it right now, and I think we've had a number of meetings and conferences, and it's moving forward. I certainly invite State College representatives to participate and comment. But we are confident that we'll get there. We're not quite there. We had a little bit of a, not a setback, but we had a change in the legal team for State College. Our longtime legal counsel retired, lucky guy, retired, and they're in the process of making a transition right now. So we've got that to contend with, but we're not sweating it. We know they'll make the right choice, and we'll get through this. But that's where we're at. We're again an enthusiastic participant, excited about what has been crafted, and ready to move forward and do the good work. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Councilor. Yes.
Chris, thank you. One thing, you kind of made me a little bit more nervous when you said the residential will probably be done by another developer. And again, I'm not insinuating you or your principals will do this, but again, you could develop out 14.9 acres of commercial, utilize the State Road 60 frontage, and then sell off the project, and then the required shared infrastructure doesn't get done till whenever. So in your negotiations with the college, can you all put in a time certain date when those shared infrastructure will go in regardless of the 50% of the commercial development. Say in 5 years, 7, just so I know that the State College will be getting what they're hoping to get at some point, that there'll be a date they can look to and plan and not just be open-ended.
Peter, you do sound nervous, and I don't think you're as nervous as I am, because it's my wedding anniversary today, and I forgot to tell my wife when I left this morning. So I was, since you guys are,
You want us
Wanna
to
do
call
it
a break
now?
right
I was
now?
going to
You
ask
feel
Susan to make a call to the house and smooth it over for me, and she knows my wife, and maybe we could, I could,
Well, if you want to pause, you can.
no,
make that
it's too
announcement
late now.
Yeah. Chris, I've been taking my wife to a minor league baseball game for our anniversary on Jackie Robinson Day, so I get nervous too, I hear you.
Well, I've had 38 chances, so I've done it right a few of the time.
Well,
I
best
think.
of luck on that.
I understand, thank you. I understand that, your point. I'm not sure that can be done. I think when you want to entice good commercial development to the community, and you're telling them coming in that they're going to make multi-million-dollar commitments for infrastructure, they're going to know going in they have to do it. They're going to know that it's legally required and it's going to be enforceable again against them if they don't do it. I think the more you stack on top of that, the more risk you take that they tip their hat and they go to Charlotte County or Citrus County or somewhere else. So that is a possibility. I'm not sure if that will form a final element of the agreement. We're just not that far along yet.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Anything further? Chris, you said something about a leap of faith. It's not a leap of faith. It's a leap of trust, and we hope that if this goes through today, that you come up with the right solution, and it is in accordance, because we have a tremendous staff, and we have a great lineup in the P&Z, and we'll be here too to make sure that it's right.
Right.
And I think that should alleviate some of the concerns. It's got to make many passes to get through. And so I don't know whether it's faith where we're talking about a gamble. I think it could be a sure bet, and it's done right with your commitment.
Well stated. Better than I stated it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anything further?
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience?
Bob Johnson, Carlin Subdivision. This location that we're talking about is probably one of the key locations in the county. 66 goes cross county, Sebastian, all the way across the county to Oslo. It's a key location, so it's important that this project be in good taste with the plans of the developer. The concern that I have is two. One is that Mr. Waddell years ago spent a long time with a committee working on a corridor plan. And I'd hate to see that the corridor plan be modified or exempted or whatever from the existing corridor plan that's already in proposed. I assume, but I'm not guaranteed, that routes, that 66th Avenue is compliant with the corridor plan now. I assume that it would be under these circumstances, that that whole intersection, what have you, would be completely compliant with that corridor plan. As far as the residential sector goes, I don't know how it happened, but by the Chick-fil location there where the apartments are at, those are 3-story apartments with no elevators. So I would hope that whatever residential is developed, even some of these other developments that have been around a long time have elevators. 3 stories is unacceptable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Morning.
Morning, gentlemen, ladies. Joseph Paladin, president of Black Swan Consulting. I'm also a builder and developer here in the area. Several years ago, about 7 years ago, when we first started working on this mixed-use plan, we were talking about making them build 25% of the residential before we did any commercial, and we had several workshops on it, et cetera. A lot of this, gentlemen, is market-driven. And as far as what Mr. Marine said about a different developer doing residential and commercial, a lot of times in my own developments, we have a different developer do commercial than residential because of the type of construction it is. So I don't think that's a red flag of any kind. I think that's just good business. But I support the project. I think it's a good idea, and I think it'll bring a good plus to the economy here in the area. So I support the project.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to have input on this topic? Seeing none and given ample time, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion approving the transmittal of the proposed Indian River County Comprehensive Plan text amendments to the state and regional review agencies.
Second. Any discussion?
Just, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Vice Chairman?
Looking back at the minutes from when we voted to initiate the process, I did support it at that time, just so it would go through the process, but I did withhold a caveat that I was not sure I would approve the final version, and I just, my comfort level isn't there, and so I'm probably going to be voting against the motion. But I appreciate all the work staff has put in, and the State College, and Mr. Marine and all his team, quite a bit of effort and work, but I just don't have the comfort feelings for this. And I look at the mixed use as kind of a fairness test, that there's a lot of folks that own commercial property and they're paying commercial property taxes on that, and we're allowing a residential property with lower tax base to get commercial on it. And so that's always why I've wanted to make sure that the residential does come in, and this isn't just a way to get around the zoning of allowing commercial on residential land, that there has to be that residential component. And so that's just where I am on this, and I will be voting against the motion.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything further? Any other further discussion? We'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner O'Brien dissenting. And that was a motion by Commissioner Zork, seconded by myself. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Next item on the agenda is public hearings, considering the proposed amendments to county sign regulations, land development regulations, Chapter 901, definitions, Chapter 956, sign regulations, and Chapter 912, single-family development. This is legislative in nature. Good morning, Stan and Roland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Roland DeBlois, Chief of County Environmental Planning and Code Enforcement. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation I'll be making relating to this. Again, this relates to proposed amendments to county sign regulations. Just some background, our current sign ordinance was substantially developed in the mid-1980s after some extensive public workshops, and it's relatively unchanged with albeit some changes over the years. The ordinance regulates the type, size, number, and location of signs in the unincorporated county, distinguishes between on-premise, off-premise signs, freestanding signs, facade sign or building signs, permanent signs, and temporary signs. Some signs are prohibited, such as banner or animated signs. The current ordinance allows certain signs without permits, for example, like garage sale signs. The objectives of the county's current sign ordinance: to avoid excessive proliferation and clutter, accommodate information for the public, protect property values, create an attractive business climate, protect the community's appearance, and also to improve vehicular and pedestrian safety. In 2015, there was a U.S. Supreme Court decision, which is the reason why we're bringing these forward, a case called Reed versus Town of Gilbert. In the case, a church contended that the town of Gilbert regulated signs differently based on the content of the signs, violating the freedom of speech under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The Supreme Court sided with the church in validating the town's sign code as content-based regulation of speech. The court's finding was that the town's distinctions between different types of signs was content-based, did not satisfy strict scrutiny under the Constitution. As part of the court's decision, they did clarify that localities can regulate size or sign size, location, including by zoning district, physical characteristics and duration of display, but on a content-neutral basis. This decision of the Supreme Court has broad implications throughout not only Florida, but nationwide, and localities are looking at their local sign ordinances based on this decision and reviewing their ordinances for regulations based on content. In Indian River County ordinance, there are certain aspects of our ordinance currently that are content-based, such as some of our sign definitions. We do make distinctions currently in regulating temporary signs that appear to be inconsistent with the Reed decision. For example, treating political signs somewhat different than other temporary signs. The Board of County Commissioners, aware of this decision back in July of last year, did bring this to the attention for discussion and the need for the county to look at its own ordinances based on this U.S. Supreme Court decision. And at that time, the commission did direct staff to revise the ordinance, particularly relating to our section that we have regulating temporary signs requiring permits or regulations, and then also to just in general look at the overall code for content-based regulations. So staff has done that, and we are presenting the ordinance amendments today under this hearing. It did go through the Planning and Zoning Commission under a public hearing. That occurred on December 8th, and it was continued over to January 26, 2017. Under the Planning and Zoning Commission review, they did have some recommendations, which staff has since revised the draft ordinance to account for. Some of those comments related to temporary signs on construction sites. They had some comments on what was proposed in the location and setbacks. On-premise yard and window signs, some questions and revisions, suggestions on number of signs during election periods, which I'll get into a little more. Signs at active subdivision or developments pertaining to the number of signs based on authorized agents in the development. Permit exempt signs, the duration of display, some comments related to duration to allow for reasonable real estate sales, for example. And as I mentioned, we went through a process. The ordinance has been revised to reflect the P&Z's recommendations, and ultimately they did vote 5-0 to recommend to the board adopt the proposed revisions as revised based on their comments. To get a little more into the basic summary of what's being proposed, there's a few different categories. First category are definitions. We actually have 48 definitions currently in our land development regulations related to signs, defining various types of signs. Most of the signs are content neutral, such as describing a permanent freestanding sign versus a temporary sign. Some of those definitions, however, are content-based, and what's being proposed here is to eliminate some of those content-based definitions. For example, construction sign, directory sign, political sign, special event sign. So again, the effort was to eliminate definitions that were strictly content-based. Another section of the code that was focused on are what we call our permit exempt signs. And some of the examples currently of our exempt signs are signs that don't require permits, traffic regulatory signs, real estate signs, garage sale signs, which don't need a permit, but they have certain criteria that have to be met, carriage signs, non-commercial art. We are, under this proposal, coming up with a new category, which kind of pulls some of these together, what we're calling temporary signs of limited geographic scope and number. Essentially what that is would capture, for example, garage sale signs or real estate signs that don't need permits, but they would only be exempt from needing a permit if they are of a limited scope. For example, right now, just using garage sale signs as an example, the code allows signs on premises, but also a couple of signs off premises on the road to direct potential garage sale goers to the property. Again, that's just as an example, but again, the exemption would apply to all signs just if they meet certain limited scope and parameters, therefore not needing a permit. We've also revised certain descriptions to distinguish by location instead of content of signs. For example, temporary construction signs, we revised to temporary signs on construction sites. Free expression signs, revised to on-premise yard or window signs. The other main category that we looked at were temporary signs requiring permits, and this was a category in particular that the Commission brought up when it was discussed back in July. Applies right now. We have a permit, a temporary use permit or a temporary sign permit that's issued and obtained if someone wants to put up signs for countywide events where they put the signs other than on the premises on private property, such as for fairs, shows, seasonal sales, and including political campaigns. Under the proposed revisions, again, in an effort to remove content-based distinctions, campaigns are deemed temporary events, such as any other temporary events, to put them into similar requirements regardless of content of the temporary event or sign. Some other proposed revisions. We have a section in our code currently related to what we call active subdivision or real estate developments. And essentially what those are, essentially newly approved subdivisions or developments within like a 3-year period, which would allow for sales and opportunity to sell their real estate. And this would eliminate, again, focus on location versus content. Under this section, there's more flexibility throughout the process. Right now, our ordinance essentially allows one such sign per street frontage based on authorized agents. It only allowed essentially for one. It didn't account for the fact that there may be more than one authorized agent for multiple lots within bigger subdivisions. So actually under these proposed amendments, it allowed more flexibility, more signs to account for more authorized agents within in the development. Any other revision, just as more of a cross-reference consistency, our separate code section under single-family development is proposed to be revised just to reflect the changes in the sign ordinance. The staff report that went along with this has a lot more detail and copies of the proposed ordinance. In the end, staff's recommending that the board adopt the proposed ordinance amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. Riveting. Any questions of staff?
I have a couple for Stan, try to get the right reference page. In two sections, 2H1 and then also in the residential subdivision type development signage, they both have a requirement of 300 feet of right-of-way frontage. However, we've got two existing projects, one that has come back to life after the recession. Gardens at River Grove, if you pull their particular plat and you apply that it needs to be road right-of-way, they only have 242 feet of right-of-way frontage. And I know that they've had signs out in the right-of-way and have been flagged many times, other than, if they put something other than an American flag out in the right-of-way. So I know they'd like to have some means of having legal signage. Secondly, having the signage be 5 feet back from the right-of-way line. I went down into planning this morning trying to get an idea of how far the required wall that we were required to put them in, how far that is off the property line. And in some places, it's less than 5 feet, and probably some it's less than a couple of feet. There is a portion, it's kind of a staggered setback, and where the cul-de-sac comes closest to the wall, that wall is pushed within probably a foot of the line. So not that we want to carve out unique circumstances, but this is somebody that's, signage is important to them to be able to have people know that there's a project, that you can't get to it off of 60, but part of the project fronts 60. That's one. And then secondly, just to the west of there, and I don't know the name of the project, but I know Mill Short sign is on it. That one, I believe, also has under 300 feet of frontage on 60 that would be just west of the Keith's Oil Can site. And I don't know if they're coming in with a new name or not. So we have a couple that are just these two in the 60 proximity that actually have less than the 300-foot right-of-way requirement. And one you could fix by, if they're allowed to count the Indian River Farms right-of-way, which then extends their property to the east. And I don't know if I should give this to you, Stan, to put up on the Elmo, just so people can see what we're talking about. I did not get the property appraiser's dimension of the piece to the west, other than, so on there you have a property that has quite a bit of right-of-way frontage, but the way the ordinance is written, it has to be right-of-way frontage. So they're only at 242 feet of right-of-way. Then it changed to Indian River Farms right-of-way, of which they have well over the 300, but the wording only addresses road frontage. And then secondly, on the other one, I'm presuming we made them put the wall up, but the black line in the picture, you can kind of see the black line is as close as we could off the property appraiser maps. On the right side, the wall is probably less than 5 feet behind the line. Then when you go to the west where the cul-de-sac is, the wall and the cul-de-sac pretty much in the property line are right. There's maybe a foot or two of separation. So that area wouldn't comply, but you have a small portion east of the cul-de-sac and then a portion west of the cul-de-sac that you could get signage in. And not knowing what's the best place to put a sign for there, I don't know if those two areas that have the 5 foot of clearance would work, but I think the 300 feet rule would preclude them from having any legal signage there.
Well,
again,
Stan, for clarification though, they're allowed to put a sign up, and if they have 300 feet, they can put an additional sign, is that correct?
That's correct. So any
they-
amount of frontage under 300 feet, you get one sign,
You
and
get
and you have
one.
to be over 300 feet to get the additional sign. So it's
Okay.
meant to
They
be
could still put a sign up,
scale.
so-
Okay, so they would be, now the 5 foot from all rights of way, in this case, the majority of where the wall is in the property line, I guess it gives them, there is a portion place you could put a sign within the 5 foot
Right.
rule.
In this particular case, you're correct, Commissioner, that the 5 foot setback limits where they can put the one sign that they're allowed to have, but they do have area to do that. And you're also correct that county requirements for the residents of the subdivision up against State Road 60 required a wall. The wall varies in terms of where it's located in relation to the right-of-way line, and we didn't make them put it all the way up to the property line, but that's where it is. It's close to it in some cases, but there are areas there where they will meet the 5-foot setback and have.
So in reading this, and I have to say that I'm probably on my third time of going through this, so this is only referring to the additional sign. So in this case, where they don't have any entry street off of 60, I was reading it thinking they could have a sign at their entrance, which is off of 22nd or 23rd Street, I think in this case, 21st Place is actually how they get to it off of 43rd, the meander through the existing neighborhood. So they could have one at their entrance, and if they have, so if they can only have one.
That's correct. They can have one. Some of the issues on that particular project, and it is a bit unusual, their entrance is nowhere near their 60 frontage.
Right.
You probably, if you're marketing it, you want to say,
Enter off 43rd Avenue and something.
great frontage to advertise it, but then you want to completely de-emphasize the fact that you're right up against State Road 60 once you get in the project, right?
Right.
So it's a whole different sort of feel there. But I think the main issue in the past with the developer was banners and kind of lining up there in front. But they have sufficient frontage for one sign, temporary sign out front.
Okay, and then they could still have something when they're coming off of
At
the
their
20.
entrance, that's
At
correct.
the main entrance
That's
itself.
correct.
Okay. And then secondly, the 20 feet from contiguous property line, so that means on the west side, they would need to be 20 feet away from the westerly property line of the plat?
We did, there's two sorts, it would be 20 under the temporary sign requiring a permit under the active real estate or subdivision sign. There was a discussion related to lessening that setback to 10 feet for the permit exempt signs, which we did. We also had a revision to make sure that it didn't obstruct easements.
Right,
But
because you don't want to block the
my
line of sight.
understanding, yes, 20 feet.
Okay, and so that addresses the questions I received from a couple folks on project signage, and then the prior item that was mentioned, that when you have one or more marketers in this particular size, I think it's just one particular one, so in front of their model, they could have model hours, contact information, website, that type of, somebody happens to be in there after hours.
Right, and the changes that Roland described are for, what we've seen is in the larger subdivisions, you have more than one builder.
Right.
You could have, 100 or 200 lots,
Right.
and it gives some more allowance for those type of situations.
And the other thing I want to point out is one of the things, again, under the content-based, content-neutral focus of these revisions, we used to, or in the current ordinance, actually specify limitations on hours, what the sign would say. We've eliminated that.
Right.
This is purely to establish on location and site. Once you get to that point and you're allowed to sign, we're not really looking at the content anymore. It's
Right,
just meeting the location and use category.
Okay.
And I think that's an important thing to remember with the content neutral sign ordinances now. We're trying to thread the needle to allow for certain things, but limit unintended consequences of making these changes. So I think we have to be careful.
Yes, as the county administrator says, most of this is in response to Reed versus Gilbert, Arizona, which compelled Commissioner O'Brien and myself to put other agenda items on the agenda for discussion to ensure that we have the same type of fabric in the community as we've had all along. This is not to try to work out a carnival-like or circus-like environment of signs, which are not effective anyway. I mean, if anybody wants those multiple signs all over, they're just nothing but distraction. And see, the sheriff is here. It's also a public safety issue. It's very distracting, and the line of sight, and that's pretty bold for someone who's part of the process that we have occasion to put up signs, but I take that very seriously, and to put them up appropriately within guidelines of all jurisdictions and respect. And I don't see much concern about the setback. It might not be the immediate big sell because it's not right before your eyes, but signage is signage, and it's there, and it's got to be done appropriately, and we have to work with the constraints of the content regulation that was a result of the Supreme Court decision. So I want to commend staff for working through this and getting us to the spot we're in today. And I don't think that we will see, I hope we don't see an overglut of signs. Otherwise, Roland and his team are going to be very busy come that political season as well. Thank you. Anything further? Any question from the staff? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to discuss this? Well, this is a public hearing, so I'd like to open up a public hearing. Seeing none and giving ample opportunity for anyone to come forward, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners.
Go ahead and move staff recommendation to adopt the proposed changes.
Second. I'll take a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion?
Just would like to say thank you to Roland and everybody. This was probably a nightmare to do, and my apologies for bringing it forward, Roland, but I think y'all have done a really good job with the restrictions we had to work with, so thank you very much for doing all this.
Did a job well done. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. At this time, we will take a brief recess.
Thank you very much. Caught me a little off guard there. Per section 312.18 of the Ordinance Code, the Public Works Director maintains a ledger which reflects the installation of various traffic control devices in the unincorporated areas of Indian River County. Semi-annually, the Public Works Director presents a resolution containing the ledger for approval by the board. We saw this in January of this year. Per the board's direction at that time, this proposed ordinance would eliminate this requirement and instead have the ledger be maintained on the county's website for the public to be able to view at any time. The county attorney's office simply recommends that we open up the public hearing on this item, take any public comment, and then close the public hearing and then approve the ordinance as presented. I am here for any questions.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking forward to the public comment.
We have any public comment? We will now open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward on the public hearing? Seeing none, we will now close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, it's always a great day when you can expunge a little bit of unnecessary bureaucracy from the system, and with that, I'll move approval of the item.
That is moved by Commissioner Solari, seconded
Second.
by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda. Commissioner O'Brien, will you read the next item on the agenda?
The next item is public discussion items. Request to speak from Keith Granger regarding building a storage building, resolved code enforcement violation. I think the gentleman was here earlier. Stan was here earlier? Okay. He might have stepped out, but we will, if the board's permission, we will allow Mr. Granger to speak if he comes back after the break. Next item is public notice items, 10C1. Notice of a scheduled public hearing for March 14, 2017. The proposed GO line route changes associated with the opening of the new main transit hub, and that is legislative in nature. 10C2, notice of scheduled public hearing March 14, 2017, to consider Collier Creek Estate subdivision petition water assessment project utility phases 1, 1A, and 1B in Indian River County, and that is legislative in nature as well. And that is all the public notice items, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you. Thank you for filling in for Counselor as well. And then the next item on the agenda, as you continue on so gracefully.
Department of Matters, Community Development, 12A1, consideration of the county's comprehensive plan update and evaluation and appraisal report, known as EAR options. And with that, turn it over to Mr. Stan Bowling, Community Development Director. Stan?
Thank you, Commissioner. This is an item, it's not a public hearing, but we wanted to present this information under departmental matter for discussion. This is with respect to evaluation and appraisal report. The evaluation and appraisal report is an important part of the planning cycle. Not too long after Lion King came out, we came up with the circle of planning here. So, and it still holds true today. It kind of as we start with analysis and data and so forth, and come up with objectives and policies of what we want. We establish the LDRs, land development regulations, and implement it, but then there's always feedback with evaluating the comprehensive plan, and then ultimately that leads to amendments. In fact, you all saw an amendment just earlier in your agenda. So the basic planning process involves a number of steps, but evaluation is important, and it happens by topic. It could be a local update, or it could be through a rigorous evaluation and appraisal report process where you look at every element all at the same time. And you can revise the plan accordingly, the same type of items there. But the evaluation and appraisal report is quite robust. The county's first plan, comprehensive plan, was adopted in 1982. That was in response to a 1975 state act that required it. A lot of progress was made with that plan, but it was there was a new act by the legislature in 1985, and our current adopted 1990 plan is really still in force, although it's been updated a number of times and comprehensively so. First in 1996 with an appraisal and evaluation report that led to amendments to the plan a couple of years later. We had a second evaluation and appraisal report done in 2008, which led to amendments in 2010. And as you saw earlier, in the mixed-use policy, for instance, that was something that came out of the 2008 evaluation and appraisal report. So we've been through two very thorough ones as well as other types. Just to go back in time a little bit, the 1982 comprehensive plan, this was the plan that was in effect when I got here a couple of years after this was adopted. And a lot of progress was made with this plan. Actually, it was a painful process, as I understand it.
Very.
Densities were lowered, other types of elements were put into the plan, and then when it was updated in 1990, got, of course, much larger with a lot of state requirements involved in it. We had the evaluation and appraisal in 1996, another significant effort. In 1998, the revised plan, and in 2008, again, a rigorous effort with the evaluation and appraisal report process. And this is essentially the plan that we have since 2010, and it's been amended and was actually updated pretty thoroughly just last year. Now, the purpose of the evaluation and appraisal report is to assess the plan's failure, successes, changes in conditions, and any revisions that come from any of the number of elements that we have in the plan. And prior to June of 2011, each government had to do that periodically, roughly every 7 years. But in 2011, the state legislature changed the requirements and gave local governments, including Indian River County, much more discretion as to whether they need to conduct an update and how to do that. So we no longer have to submit an EAR to the state DEO for sufficiency determination. But we do have to take a look at whether or not one is required. And under the Florida statutes now, every 7 years, our current deadline is for this fall for Indian River County, determine whether or not the comprehensive plan needs to be amended to reflect changes made to state requirements. Essentially, the state is now looking for making sure that we're consistent with state requirements in terms of the comprehensive plan. We need to notify the state by this fall. We kind of like to do it now. If we do determine that amendments are needed, then we have 1 year from that deadline to process the amendments and bring the plan into consistency with current state requirements. Again, for us, October 1st is the deadline for notifying the state. And just by way of reminder, all the different elements of the plan, numerous ones that's why they call it comprehensive, things that integrate and fit together. All of those goals, objectives, and policies from those plans, staff evaluated in terms of whether or not we need to make any updates to be consistent with state requirements. We also involved various other county departments in taking a look at that. And our finding was that the plan is in good shape. We are consistent with state requirements. We went through the rigorous EAR adjustments in the 90s and then in the later 2000s. It's been amended several times and updated, and we actually had a broad update just last fall in 2016. So our finding is that it's in good shape and it's up to date. So our conclusion is that we don't need to update the comprehensive plan to meet the Florida statutes, and that's essentially our recommendation. One other thing that we would like to note, one of the things that was a bit disappointing in the schedules that we had for the other EARs was that it was really out of phase with good census data. You tend to get those 2 years after census is concluded. So we think it would make sense to plan for a thorough evaluation and appraisal process in approximately 2022 when we'll have the good data and we can take a look at every element and do a comprehensive update, because we think that is important to do. And if we would do that every 10 years locally, that makes sense to staff. So it's not a decision that you all have to make, but just wanted to let you all know of what staff's recommendation would be on that particular issue. Now, with respect to the item before you, our recommendation is that the board directs staff to submit a notice letter to the state indicating that the board's determined it's not necessary to amend the comprehensive plan at this time. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Stan.
Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Yes, Mr.
Yeah, I'd like to actually take this opportunity to thank Stan and his whole staff for doing such a good job with the comprehensive plan over the last years. I think it's, aside from being a bit too long, it's a great document. And understanding how well it's actually been working for our community, I'd be happy to make a motion to go with staff recommendation, but simply add that they go ahead and start planning to come back to the board with their outline or plan of how they'll update the plan after the 2022 census data comes in. And that is, thank you.
And that's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Any members have any other input? Well, I will say that, yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And, well, Stan, you've gotten 3 compliments today. Keep up the good work.
I better leave.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the discussion with Public Works on the Roseland Community Center request for Board of County Commission direction. Good morning again.
Commissioner, Rich Berka, Indian River County Public Works Director. Back in October 9th, 2004, the Board of County Commissioners, 1984, the Board of County Commissioners leased the Roseland Women's Club, the Roseland Community Center. and they've been occupying the building ever since. In November of 2015, it was brought to the attention of the facilities that the building was showing signs of differential settling on the east side of the building. So facilities brought into an engineer on board, and they analyzed the east side of the building and came up with a design plan to raise the building about 4.5 inches. As you can see, back up, one please, thanks. If you look at this picture, you can see that the right side of the building, or the east side of the building, is lower than the west side or the left side. This is part of the differential settling that's occurring. In preparation for raising the building, the contractor that we had on board, once they dug out the dirt from in front of the building, we found severe termite damage in the structural members, not only the support beams, but the joists that run and hold the floor up. At that time, we analyzed the building and we determined that we stopped construction so we get a better understanding of what was going on with the building. So what we found was severe termite damage and other settlement within the building. Go ahead. What we got is Roseland Community Center has a historical marker. It's used by numerous people in the community. It's got a pavilion, very nice setting, park-like setting. Parks and Recreation take care of the park. But here's the building. On the left side on the right side of the door, you can see where the termite damage in the right picture along the structural member of the building. Go ahead. This is the beam that we took out. As you can see, it used to be a nice solid oak beam. It's been destroyed by termites, and it was one of the issues we were having with that front corner of the building. Now, on the left side, that's a joist that runs across holding the floor up. You can see the termite damage in it. The new beam underneath it was where the contractor was starting to replace the one that you just saw in the last pictures. The one on the right, that's the flooring of the building. The subfloor has been eaten completely by termites. That is the actual pine flooring that also has termite damage. This is underneath the building just in front, along the very front of the building. You can see that there's damage to the subflooring, to the wood members. It's termite damage. We crawled in as far as we could during our evaluation. This is the underside of the building. On the left side is one of the old wood supports that's failing. This is one of the ones that we're in the process of replacing. On the right side, you can see that in the middle of the building, there's a support beam on an old wood support that is actually settling in that area also. Good. This is the rear of the building. You can see on the left side, it's cinder blocks. We're not sure when this occurred, but some of the wood piers have been replaced with just open-celled cinder blocks. On the right side is a beam that's been damaged. It's got a combination of termite damage and water damage, and it was shored up with some 2x8s, but we're not sure when this occurred. This is the floor inside. As I was showing you earlier, the wood flooring, it's a pine tongue and groove. On the left side is the pieces that come out of the hole on the right side. That's just the tongue and groove. There should be a subfloor there that was completely destroyed. Additionally, on the building, there's water damage in numerous locations. On the left side is the eave. On the right side is the actual roof where where water damage is occurring to the roof under plywood. Go ahead. This is the front of the building. This is water damage. Suspected termite, but I believe it's water damage to the soffit in the front. The contractor, based on that information and some internal evaluations of the building, we knocked a couple holes in the drywall to see if we could see what we could find. The contractor has given us a very preliminary estimate of $150,000 to $200,000 to make repairs to the building. And so that we're before you today to discuss that. There is, he gave me a price of $40,000 to just raise the south side or the front of the building in conjunction with the east side of the building. And it's one of the options that are available to you all today that we'll be discussing further. Staff has talked to the president of the Roseland Women's Club regarding this issue, and they've got a presentation letter that they want to bring forward. So we have four options that we're presenting today. Option one is to fully evaluate the building and get a better understanding of the estimated cost for repairs. Based on preliminary investigation, the engineering firms available quoted about $30,000 to do a full evaluation. Once we got them on board, it would take 3 to 4 months to complete. Option two is to complete the existing raising of the east side of the building and authorize the front side of the building to be excavated and raised at the same time. The contractor has provided us with a cost of approximately $40,000 in addition to the $30,000 that we're currently under contract with to raise the east side of the building. And then we can address the termite damage and other damage at a later date. Option three, we can offer the building to the Roseland Women's Club with restrictions to resale of the property or however the board pleases. And then option four is to demolish the building and the septic system and reevaluate the use of the property at a later date. Because this expenditure is unbudgeted, at this time we're not sure where the money would come from or authorized, but we believe it would be general fund reserved for contingency. Staff recommends option three, offer to donate the building and the property to the Roseland Women's Club as is, with restrictions to the resale of the property. Barring that, we would recommend option four if that's not feasible, to demo the building and reevaluate the property at a later date.
Thank you, Rich. Again, this is a historical site, and it's an integral part of the community gathering, and we have serious termite damage. And you presented an option of raising it partially. Isn't there any concern that if we did endeavor in that in that option, that we might see other unforeseen damage and create additional harm by raising?
Absolutely. Raising of a building like this is an unknown. We do the best we can. Once we excavate, remove the sidewalk, get down to so that we can see, we may find more damage that we're unaware of at that time. There's always the risk of the building shifting. It's a very, very interesting process, and if you're not careful, the building could actually slide. So we're concerned with the damage and what we'll find as we continue on, but at this time I can't answer it fully. We just don't know. There are unknowns we're unable to find at this time.
And we don't want to see that happen. That's one of the major concerns. I truly look forward to the presentation that we'll or the letter and the presentation that we'll see today. If anybody have any questions of Rich? If not, we would like to see the presentation from the Women's Guild.
Thanks, Dan.
And hang tight, Rich. We'll be looking at one of those options.
Good afternoon. My name is Verna Morera. I live at 112 Drake Way, Sebastian. I am currently president of the Roseland Women's Club, and I wish now to make a brief statement. The Roseland Community Building is historic in nature and of great interest. The purpose of this project is to renovate and breathe new life into a historical building while not changing its original charm and character. The Roseland Women's Club provides social, community, and civic activities and opportunities for members and the surrounding communities. The club enhances member and public knowledge of local issues and resources through speakers and on-site visits to various community entities. The club maintains a community building for civic group activities, including music, health, this being step programs, yoga, meditation, and exercise, family celebrations, and other local meetings. Until closing the building for repairs, 7 groups serving their community needs use the building on a weekly basis year-round. Prior to closing, our building was a designated safe haven site for the Roseland United Methodist Church preschool. The building is a valued resource serving a variety of other community needs for special events, which are usually on weekends, such as birthdays, bridal showers, wedding and graduation receptions, and memorial services. The Roseland Women's Club is a not-for-profit organization that has a small income from building rentals to help maintain the property. An annual fundraiser provides funds for contribution to a variety of other community entities supporting health and welfare for those in need. These include Safe Space, the Ecumenical Council Food Pantry, Shiloh Youth Ranch, VNA Hospice, Joe's Club, which is an Alzheimer's respite, Sebastian River Middle School Cowboy Roundup, and also Micco Library and Indian River County North Library subscriptions. The Roseland Women's Club has been providing community services from their building since its completion in 1929. We are seeking the help of the Indian River County Commissioners to postpone this item so we may make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we truly appreciate everything that you do in the community for the greater good of the community. And it's not self-serving. You're serving many in many different ways, and we truly appreciate that and want you to have a home.
Thank you.
So your words were well received. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I came in here focusing on option 3, which I think would be the most appropriate, but certainly at this time, if the woman from the Roseland Women's Club needs some time, unless we can get from Rich that it poses some tremendous health and safety risk, I think that it'd be a great thing for the board to give them a reasonable amount of time to come up with any proposals. And as they're doing that, if they need any further information from us which we can deliver or help them in any way coming up with a good proposal, that we offer that support.
And this would not preclude any further assistance that staff might be able to provide if called upon to get
I mean, we continue to maintain the site and make sure that the inside is safe, and whatever we need to do to basically protect the property, we do, and give the fine people from the Roseland Women's Club time to come up with what they believe is a doable proposal.
I'm happy to second that motion, if that was your motion.
My motion.
Thank you. How much time do you think we need? I know it's very challenging. You have to see what your options are, where we can get funding.
We made our presentation on October 13th, 2015. The issues that were brought up today were basically discussed at that time. We were told of this latest information on March 1st. Today is March 7th. We have not had enough time to even research and find out what our resources could possibly be in this matter.
Well, the detected damage that it was discovered most certainly and is historically an eye-opening experience. Water damage, dry rot damage, termites, that's something that it would not have been fully seen until opened up by a licensed contractor.
Understandable,
So again,
yeah.
you know, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances, but I know that you trust that we want to do everything we can to keep you in a home. But there is a point where we would have to say that it is better. And then what's dangling before us is the fact that it's a historical site. And, you know, there are certain contradictions too that we have to abide by. But what value has to be placed and what has to be put into it to make it whole again. So, you know, we'll give ample time. I was just looking for a rough thought process. If you think maybe 6 months from now we will be able to have that, and that 6 months now, as Commissioner Solari pointed out, it does not pose a public or personal threat by delaying.
Commissioners, the building remains closed. It cannot be occupied in its current state. That's the first thing. Second thing is that we have the piers are exposed on the east side of the building. The contractor has stopped. A prolonged postponement to this could jeopardize the building. I would have to have the contractor go in and shore it up further. If we get some major rains, we may lose a pier or two, and that's my concern. That's why we brought this to the board quickly. 2 or 3 weeks, I think we can live with that. Any further, I've got to do something to protect that building.
Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I mean, 2 or 3 weeks is not going to give the woman from the Roseland Women's Club time
No,
enough
it's
to
not.
figure it out. So, Rich, do you have an estimate on how much it would cost to shore it up?
I could get the contractor just to shore it up for a couple of months. He may charge $5-6 grand to do it. We just got to protect the piers from the rain and the weather while we evaluate this, but we have already removed one of the existing piers as we were doing our replacement. So I hesitate to leave it for 6 months.
Fine. I can see why we wouldn't leave it for 6 months, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect that the women are going to be able to come up with a plan in 3 weeks.
No.
I'll suggest 90 days to come up with a plan, not the implementation of the plan, but just a plan that we can be confident enough in that we can just sort of move forward. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll amend my motion to give the Roseland Women's Club 90 days to come up with just a tentative plan. That'll give you all enough time to see what the biggest hurdles are, and if there are hurdles you might want to overcome. And authorize the Public Works Department to go ahead and shore up the building in the meantime, but it may be more than the $5,000 or $6,000, because you'll have to keep in mind that it'll be 90 days before they come up with a plan, but it's going to be some 6 months to a year at least before they'd be able to actually take over the property. So there's no sense, I don't think, to pretend that our work with the property is going to be done in 90 days. So with that in mind, my motion is amended to take in those 2 items.
Second, so amended.
And
that sound appropriate?
I have one more question. If there is in fact a period of time where we will not be able to have access to the building, we have a piano and other furnishings in there, and we're afraid of the mold problem without the air conditioner running. The air conditioner right now is disconnected because of the location of where it was. Is it possible that we can have the connection for the electricity and the air conditioner or fans or something moving in there, and get something in there to avoid some mold?
Mr. Chairman, I actually think that's fairly reasonable. You can't maintain the building without some of that.
I mean, we can hook the air conditioner back up. I mean, we had to move the entire condensing unit, so we'd have to go ahead and just have it hooked back up. As you're aware, the condensing unit, it's a 5-ton unit. We moved it to the back to get it out of the way because it was right where we had to excavate to replace the pier. So if it's going to be a prolonged time, We do, she's correct.
That's-
We have no choice but to put the AC back in there, or we're gonna have mold problems.
That's-
We're gonna complicate our problem right now.
Yeah, that's the best thing to do. Staff would recommend we do that, restore what we need to make it through a prolonged time period.
Restore utility and AC, but there'll be no occupancy.
Correct. There cannot be any
We're
occupancy.
well
of that.
aware of that, yeah.
Okay.
But
We
we'll
are
have to
aware of
understand that occasionally with our staff, someone from the Women's Club may want to go in to take care of their property. I mean, that's not a use of the property, that's just to maintain their property. And that's when staff is up there anyway to maintain the property.
It's not an issue to go in and just check on. We just can't have functions in that.
Absolutely, absolutely
A
no
single-
functions.
A single person going in there just to check on their piano that's not a problem. You gotta stay away from the hole in the floor.
Right. Our groups using the facilities have been advised that it was closed until further notice, and we will make sure that we correspond with them again to keep them updated. We told them that we would keep them updated. So I guess we shall see where we can go from here. Those 4 options are still presented, is that correct?
Yes, they're all still viable options.
Right, so right now, we've just asked for a postponement of the vote, correct?
Under your request, we have honored your request, and we're
Okay.
going to have that 90 days.
To come up with the plan.
At that point, we'll want to bring it back and make a further determination, and which may include one of the other options as well.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
That was a motion by, yes. That was a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by myself. Any further discussion?
If I may to the chair, I know there were a lot of discussions going on about the motion. I just wanted to clarify it for the clerk in case the clerk was uncomfortable or not following
Yes.
all the motions. Essentially, we're going to postpone the decision today. We're going to give, the staff has the authority or the authorization to move forward with shoring up the building. And the Women's Club is going to be given 90 days to present a plan on how they're going to proceed forward. And 4, staff is going to be restoring the AC to the building. Is that the 4 major points of the motion?
I'll just add to it the portion of that, with the idea that it's going to need to be shored up for a year and a half. I mean, there's nothing short-term about the shoring up.
Okay, so the shoring up of the building will be modified to address the year and a half time frame.
So we're not precluding the dollar amount to a certain,
No, it's going to be a reasonable dollar amount.
Reasonable.
I'd mentioned it'd be more than $5,000 to $6,000. I'm not going to sit here and guess how much it might
Right.
be.
well agreed.
We'll let the county administrator make that determination
Right,
as he gets the information from Mr. Spierka.
I think we've gotten good direction here to know how to move forward on shoring the place up, and that will give time so that we can come together hopefully with a better plan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. County Attorney matters.
Thank you very much to the chair. The first item is there's a vacancy on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. This is for the position of a citizen who represents employers within the jurisdiction. We've received an application from a gentleman by the name of Stephen Duringer to fill this vacant position. County Attorney's Office recommends that the board review the application and the resume and determine whether to appoint the gentleman, Mr. Duringer, to fill the position. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, Mr. Derringer here? If not, commissioners? Commissioners? Anything? Anyone care to provide for a motion so that we can move on to the next item?
Mr. Chairman, according to the application, Mr. Derringer's only been in the community about 4 months. Might be a little premature to be on a committee with not having spent a little bit more time. So I would go ahead and move that we just keep the position open and see if we get other applicants.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item under Attorney's Matters, this is a public meeting for transmission line routes. On February 10th, FPL submitted a letter to Indian River County indicating that FPL was going to be proposing a 230 kilovolt transmission route connecting the proposed Indian River Solar Energy Center to a proposed Heritage substation, and then connecting that substation to the existing FPL Malabar Midway line. I'd like to note that the Solar Energy Center site is proposed to be located on the east side of 122nd Avenue Southwest, immediately north of the Indian River County St. Lucie County line. Additionally, the line will be connecting to the Heritage substation, which is proposed to be located at the southeast corner of 98th Avenue and 4th Street. The Solar Energy Center is subject currently to a major site plan and special exception use approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard the special exception approval on February 23rd, and it was approved. It will now be going to the full board on the March 21st meeting. It is anticipated that Planning and Zoning will consider the major site plan approval for the substation at the March 9th meeting. Now, per section 303.28 of the Indian River County Code, the county has the right to request that an electric utility have a public informational meeting conducted within 60 days. The meeting is held here in these chambers. FPL has requested that the commission not request the hearing to be held. FPL notes in its letter that these lines are a significant distance from any residence, and also FPL has indicated that they've conducted significant public outreach, including an open house meeting at the intergenerational facility on January 26th. Simply, it's up to the board to choose whether it wishes to have this public information meeting. County Attorney's Office recommends that the board decide whether to request FPL to conduct the public information hearing here in the commission chambers. And I believe there are representatives from FPL who are here.
Mr. Chairman, based on the location of the power plant and the fact that there are basically no people around there, and this is even unlike the mining ordinance that we had, that there, I don't believe, are even any cows that will be disturbed, I will make a motion that the board not require the optional meeting for the transmission line.
Second.
It's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any further discussion?
I just am concerned that Mr. Burkett won't be able to get billable hours if we don't hold the meeting.
Not something I lose sleep over, Mr. Commissioner.
I think he'll be able to work that option out, too. He's a
I
good
did
attorney.
have one question, maybe Jason, you know. I had planned to attend the informational meeting at the IG Center, and then Dylan advised that since it was quasi-judicial, we might not want to show up there. So do we know what kind of attendance that meeting got? Just any idea if a lot of people showed up or not? Or
I got the same message. I did go at the beginning of the open house. There was a good influx of people, actually a number of city residents as well as city officials, the city manager.
All right, good.
They had more than adequate, FPL had more than adequate staff to answer any questions that were fielded or proposed by any of the people kind of going through the greeting area. So I'd say a successful event. You can never know how many people are going to turn out, but it was a nice evening, and obviously the IG building is a great place to have those types of community outreach.
Yeah, I don't normally listen to attorney's advice either, but that time I did follow what Dylan said, so.
Well, I generally listen to our counsel's advice and did take heed to his direction, but I understand that a lot was accomplished in information. Thank you, and we appreciate that. And unfortunately, we did not attend, so Mr. Barquette did not have the opportunity to see us there. Anything further?
Mr. Chairman, if I might just to clarify one of the reasons why I did go. Before it was suggested that we don't go, I had already sat in on a number of meetings with staff and FP&L representatives over the last 6 months. So I was already essentially predisposed of what was being proposed at the open house and didn't feel the attendance of that was any different than the meetings I'd already had attended with FP&L representatives here at the county with the county administrator and planning staff.
And I'm
before
sure Commissioner Zark will be disclosing those
Yes, sir.
ex parte communications when we get to a public hearing.
We
That is correct.
appreciate the explanation and confession. Thank you. With that, yes, we have to publicly disclose any of those contacts. Anything from the public on this? Having given ample time, I'm seeing none. Gentlemen and lady? Thank you. Commissioners?
The motion's been made and seconded.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next county attorney's item is the second amended and restated Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program interlocal agreement. Back on November 22nd, the board had voted to begin the process of joining the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. As part of that process, the board needs to approve an amendment to the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program interlocal agreement, which will reflect the substitution of the Indian River County for Indian River County Lagoon Coalition. Now, Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program attorney and I have worked together on a draft amended interlocal agreement, and I present that amended interlocal agreement to you today. If the board approves this amended interlocal agreement, the next step will be for the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program Council to approve the amended ILA unanimously at its next meeting. Its next meeting is, I believe, Friday, April 14th. The next step then after that, if it is approved unanimously, would then be to record the document in Indian River County, and then Indian River County would be responsible for paying back the pro rata share of the membership to those folks of the Indian River County Lagoon Coalition for the remainder of this portion of the year. Simply turn it back over to the board. We present the amended interlocal agreement for approval by the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm here for any additional questions.
Commissioners?
Move staff recommendation to approve the second amended and restated interlocal agreement.
Second? I'll give that one to Sue.
That's, oh, thank you. It's just stepping right in there. I appreciate it. That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? Any members of the public wishing to come forward regarding the proposal?
William Farrell, also known as Tuck Farrell, 12546 North Highway A1A, Vero Beach, Florida. Also am president of the North Beach Civic Association. And I walked along the river last night and thought about things as I saw the dolphin and all the beautiful fish. And I know all of us in this room care about our environment. I've known Dr. DeFries. He's heading the team. I've known him for many, many years. He was a professor at FIT years ago, and I think he's one of the most balanced people I know on the lagoon. I've gone to a lot of meetings with scientists at Harbor Branch and a lot of other places and FIT, but I can highly recommend him and his team. I've heard a lot of good things from them, and I think they're trying to do the right thing. And they're trying to attack this from so many different areas. You can't be a one-trick pony on the river. There's a lot of causations, I think, with their problems. And you have to put your fingers on the many myriad of problems and try to solve them. And I think they have a pretty good handle on this. So we're highly in favor of supporting the move that you're taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Anything further?
For the record, Dwayne DeFries, I'm the Executive Director of the IRL Council, host of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. While I wasn't going to speak after Tuck, plugged me so hard, I thought I'd say hello and offer you this. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm really pleased to be moving forward to have you join the council. We're glad of your interest, And I can promise you that my staff and I will work with you, your staff, and your citizens to make sure that all the projects and the work that we do is in the best interest of the county, the community, and the Indian River Lagoon.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion carries 3-2 with Commissioner Solari and myself dissenting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilor, earlier on, you said if this passes with a 5-0, it passed with a 3-2. So does that change anything? Yes, you did. Yes.
No, he was referring that must pass the Lagoon
Must,
Council's meeting.
yes, okay.
I'm sorry, yes.
All right, I just want to
was like,
clarify.
did I- No, yeah, the Indian River Lagoon Council has to approve the change unanimously.
Oh, I see, when we do the retro, right,
I'm-
I got
yep.
you. Okay. Well, motion passed 3-2. So it still passed here. On to the council. With that, the next item, thank you for that clarification. The next item is something that I wanted to bring forward. As we all know, we just recently lost a dear friend, a well-committed deputy, a road deputy, a corrections deputy, a family member, and someone who was integral to our community. And that's one Deputy Sheriff, Gary Chambliss. And while we're all talking about Gary now, and we're thinking about him and his family and all of us who are mourning the loss, I know that it's human nature to begin to move forward and move in a direction where we're speaking less. We're always thinking, but we're speaking less. And I would like to propose to my fellow commissioners that we dedicate 28th Avenue from 41st through 45th Street as Deputy Sheriff Gary Chambliss Memorial Avenue. Now, this will be a commitment to his life, his legacy, and his impactfulness here in the community, which I could probably speak for about 3 to 4 hours on about our relationships, as he was a fellow colleague and a good friend. But I don't think that that's necessary to move this item forward. Again, and I don't know if anyone has any discerning thoughts on whether it's deputy sheriff or do we enter Kool-Aid into it. But I believe it's very fitting on first blush for Deputy Sheriff Gary Chambliss Avenue. And I do have a concern that the children today will always remember Deputy Sheriff Gary Chambliss. And there won't be a sign on a street that they say, who was that? We will maintain the continuity and the commitment that he had to the community by this very signage. And I'd like to do it up in the near future. Again, this is something that, unfortunately, in a previous jurisdiction that I was employed, that we did many times throughout the year. One year, I believe we did 10. One is one too many, but I think it's fitting and appropriate, and I don't think that we should wait, as we did with another commemoration, let 25 years go by before signage is placed. I think we need to do it now. There are some friends and family in the audience that might want to step up and say a few words, and if that's fitting and appropriate, I would encourage them to do that now. but I would like to know my colleagues' thought process on whether we should go forward. As one of the other benefits or detriments of being chairman is that I do not have the capacity to make a motion independently. So I would need the support of at least one of our commissioners to make that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I always sit ready to help you in any way I can, and I'd be happy to make a motion to go ahead and move the naming of 28th Avenue to Deputy Sheriff Gary Chambliss Avenue. I believe that would be preferred, for me at least, over Kool-Aid. I just find that label to be more respectful,
Yes.
all in all, and
Agreed.
preferred. But I'd also like to add, the same way we have, I believe, Martin Luther King, that we keep the dual numbers and name officially, so we don't go, on official maps, it'll be labeled both 28th and Deputy Sheriff Gary Chambliss Avenue, to make it easier going forward for emergency services to get to any addresses, so there's no confusion or anything like that.
And I will be honored to second that motion. Thank you. Just for clarification, for the public's knowledge, is that when you change the name of a street, there are many notifications and involved processes to ensure that you get mail and you have proper response, and everything has to be geocoded, and it takes quite an amount of time to change the address. And I just want the public to know, if this motion carries, that it will be done in honorarium. It will be a memorial, and the signage will be there. And yes, it would be placed, my intention would be to place it above 28th Avenue, but for those streets.
And for everything official will remain the same address.
28th Avenue.
The honor will be given to Deputy Sheriff Gary Chambliss.
And if that's fitting and appropriate, we do have a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by myself. Is there any further discussion here? Is there anyone who would like to speak on behalf of this motion? Sheriff?
Good morning, Commissioners. On behalf of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I also want to thank the family that's here for their patience in such a long and grueling meeting. On the 17th of February, of course, the Indian River County Sheriff's Office dynamics changed significantly. I did meet friends and families and have stayed in contact with them, and I can tell you that Deputy Chambliss raised two wonderful young ladies, one of them whom are here today, Brianna. I'm very proud to know her and very proud to know that a nice 25-year-old young lady is in the healing process. So I say thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Sheriff. And, well, with that, I will, Mr. Hart.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Wilford Hart, 617 19th Place Southwest, Vero Beach, Florida, 32962. 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to be here with my father, Victor Hart Sr., and him and three of his sons stood over there, and a proclamation was read, and on behalf of him, and then after that, the renaming of the Gifford Park. And that was a great day for my daddy. But the next day, my daddy got a phone call from his brother in Nassau in the Bahamas and said, "You just lost a sister." So my father lost his sister the following day. You go from excitement to proclamation to renaming, and he said, "Nobody has ever done these type of things for me before in his life," and he was excited. And then the next day he loses his sister. And so we flew over to Nassau, and on Saturday, this Saturday gone, he was ushered to the front of the church, and there were about 400 people in there. And my father made the statement, he said, "My sister will never, ever be forgotten. Never, ever be forgotten." And he charged the Bahamian people that were there to never forget the great things that his sister, Wilhelmine, had done while she was on this earth, raising 10 children, all by herself. And so today, if you had been at the funeral, questioning Deputy Gary Chandler's integrity should be out the picture. And the reason why I know, because the sheriff, Laura, he stood before probably close to 800 to 1,000 people and spoke about the integrity of Gary Chambers, and he felt good about Gary Chambers. Now, if the sheriff feeling good about one of his workers, that means you, as representative of our districts, should feel good about Gary Chambers. So today, I'm going to tell you thank you for each one of you members that are up there, from the 1st to the 2nd, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th districts, for voting this thing as a positive. And it'd be great for his family, great for our community, and it'd be great for the sheriff department. And the last thing I want to say, I hope that the individuals that are still out on those streets and the ones that were involved in this senseless act will see that sign every day. And others that are committing these heinous crimes will see this sign every day, that a fellow officer, I'm not an officer, but he's a brother of mine, lost his life leaving a church from a wake from a family member, going across the road, and he loses a family member. And then he loses his own life. And this can happen to any of us. So today I just want to tell this board, thank you for what you're doing. And we just ask that you just keep doing the right things for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Gary. With that, we'll move on to the Special Districts Boards. The Emergency Service District approval to purchase 2 complete Hurst Jaws of Life Power units from
Move staff
MES.
recommendation.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Sole source purchase of 12 800 megahertz P25 compatible mobile radios from Communications International.
So moved.
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have a sole source purchase of 4 Stryker stretchers and 2 Stryker stretchers with power load systems.
Just a question for Brian or
Commissioner
John,
O'Brien.
Mr. Chairman. I'll move approval, but just had a question.
Second.
Brian, the 2 power load ones, they'll have a higher weight capacity, I assume?
Brian Burkeen, Assistant Chief Fire Rescue. That's correct, and it's part of the new requirements that the federal government put upon us last year, that any new ambulances that we purchase and build have to have this restraining system built in with them. They do have somewhat of a slightly increased weight capacity with them, but it's more of a federal regulation that we have to abide by.
Okay, will this help reduce any like back injuries to the firefighters?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great, good. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
So it's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari. Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We'll now move on to the Solid Waste Disposal District. And the final pay to CDM Smith CCNA 2014 Work Order Number 6-2016, Annual Permit Compliance, Monitoring, and Reporting.
Mr. Chairman, you know how I always like to move these compliance monitoring and reporting expenditures, so I'll be happy to do so today.
And that's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Vinnie, I think you got saved by the presentation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. one more shot. Recommendation for award for bid number 2017028 for yard waste processing and disposal services. Vinny, I think you're going to do a little presentation.
Well,
And
Mr.
Well, if I knew there
Burkus-
was a PowerPoint, I would have moved it.
Well, yeah, you lost your opportunity. He's already at the keyboard.
While Mr. Burke is getting set up for his presentation, I just would like the record to reflect that there were actually no other members in the audience besides staff for all the emergency services district items and solid waste disposal district items.
Thank you.
Just in case anyone.
Just in case. Right. Well, we don't have an audience.
Thank you. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services, in front of a packed audience here today to go over the award of bid number 2017028 for the yard waste processing disposal services. Just a quick summary. On July 5th of 2011, the county SWID signed a 20-year agreement with NEOS, New Planet Bioenergy, INPB, for a 20-year term process to expire in 2031 at the then rate of $9.30 per ton, with an additional supplemental processing fee of $5.30 per ton. In December 20th of this year, the SWID board approved the 9th Amendment to NEOS to allow them to continue processing at that rate of $9.30, but they did cease operations at the end of 2016. They did have an interim agreement with their contractor to move on to the SWID site through the end of March 31st of this year. And between that time, the county went out for bid number 2017028. Non-mandatory pre-bid meeting was held on the 24th of January, and the bids were opened on February 17th, 2017. Just a quick summary of what was included in that bid. We estimated about 60,000 tons per year to be processed. That means they're brought onto the site, safely put into a location, and then mulched. Not with any specificity that NEOS had, but certainly just to be down into a mulched material that reduces the density and the amount of available space, with about 30,000 tons to be disposed off-site. The initial term is for 1 year. It's to commence on April 1st of this year. The agreement may be extended for 6 additional 1-year terms at the same price and conditions at the time of renewal by mutual agreement if there's certain insurance in effect, if the operation of the contractor is doing well, if it's in the best interest of the county, we would recommend to do additional 1-year terms. The agreement does have a 90-day notice to terminate. All prices are to remain the same through September 30th, 2018, and the contractor may request a CPI adjustment, but that's subject to approval by the county administrator or his designee. In your agenda packet, we had the summary of the bids that were received. 3 actual bids. Waste Management of Florida did not submit a bid, but they were in attendance at the pre-bid meeting. CRR, Consolidated Resource Recovery, Mr. Mulch and Tree Cycle. Mr. Mulch, as you can see in the middle portion of the screen, had the lowest yard waste per processing ton. Not the lowest yard waste disposal, but again, we estimated that based on historical tonnages for some total of estimated $955,800. So these are the historical costs, which we also included in the agenda backup for the last 9 years, averaging close to about 60,000 tons of base tons of material. We did have a slight uptick in 15-16, and then the supplemental tons where we had that $5.30 that NEOS had been charging us. That did go away while NEOS's contractor was doing the emergency vegetation processing on our site. And you can see what the average is, just under 800,000 for the last 9 years or so. We did a couple comparisons of what we're going to do right now is show that between October and the end of March, we have NEOS or NEOS's contractor on site doing the tonnages at the initial processing fee, but not charging us the supplemental processing fee. If Mr. Mulch is awarded the board, we estimate that the remaining tons this year to be processed about 30,000. That's where this comes in as estimated. And so we think between the NEOS contractor and award for bid, we'd just be slightly over historical amount, about 869,932. And then lastly, for comparison efforts, we took a hypothetical situation in which we looked at the fiscal year 2015-16 actual tonnages, applying the new rate that Mr. Mulch had submitted, applying the disposal rate to come up with a total cost of about 1.3. That's a worst case scenario. We know that there's also interest on the INEO site. But we don't think that this would come into effect, but we certainly wanted the commission to be aware that if we had no operation of the site and SWID was ultimately responsible for that material, that would be considered a worst case scenario. So staff recommends 3 things. I apologize. Recommendation number C was not included in the agenda backup, so I want to be clear that we're recommending 3 things. Is to the award approval of bid number 2017028 to Mr. Mulch as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, meeting the specifications that's set forth in the invitation to bid. Authorize the chairman to execute the attached agreement after review and approval by the county attorney as to form and legal sufficiency, with receipt and approval of the required payment and performance bonds and liability insurance through our risk department. And lastly, if possible, authorize the purchasing manager the approval authority to extend the agreement for up to 6 one-year terms at the same price and conditions at the time of renewal. Purchasing manager would be approving the renewal if the contractor has been performing properly, if their insurance and bond is up to date, and the year extension would be in the best interests of the county.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Question for Dylan.
Commissioner O'Brien, sure.
Condition C there wouldn't preclude us at some point to conditions change and we want to put it back out for bid, we could still do that?
Essentially, you're authorizing the purchasing manager to move forward. If the board wishes to change its mind, you could certainly pull back that authority from the purchasing manager and go out to bid.
It's a motion by Commissioner Solari, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Commissioners, I just wanted to just go back to my item for a moment there. I might have been remiss to say that I hope, it's my sincere hopes that we have another reason to embrace as we dedicate 28th Avenue to Deputy Sheriff Gary Chambliss. So we will time that accordingly, and we will announce a dedication day for friends and family and all the citizens, as well as all of us, to gather and support this. And I want to thank you all for your support on that. And finally, Madam Clerk, Leona, this is your last meeting that you will be clerking for us and recording and denoting, and we appreciate your professional, dedicated service and your dedication in training Rhonda to be our next Madam Clerk. And we don't say that this is the last time we're going to see you, that but we are very grateful of what you've done, and we will see you soon, as you will be here for just a little time longer, and we will have the proper send-off. So thank you for all that you have done for us. With that, meeting's adjourned.